and Learn podcast, hosted by Yuliya and Ina, friends, colleagues, passionate teachers and learners. In this series of cozy talks with a cup of tea or coffee, we talk about how we live and learn, move countries, adapt to change and mentalities, encourage and teach. While polishing our own understanding of learnability, we find support in the 4 pillars of Live and Learn philosophy, which include growth mindset, expat life, language acquisition, and skills development. Join us, enjoy, live and learn. I was so amazed last time we spoke about competences and skills. I could never stop thinking about all that mess around the notions that I think could put in their places. But then more questions arise when we talk about specific skills. Then is it like skills or still competences when we talk about like language competence or skill, negotiating competence or skill, communication competence or skill? Help me out.
No. When we're talking about competence, it is competence. When we're talking about proficiency, this is proficiency. So proficiency is how competent are you in the competence?
On a scale, which we remember is behind the word skill in etymology. Go and listen to our previous episode. We had much fun. What's new there?
In my world, I had the negotiation exam last week, so we had a fabulous negotiation case that my students performed and then analyzed and submitted their analysis on what they actually managed to negotiate. That was such a beautiful feeling of hearing the feedback, what they learned, and one of the main ideas of the course, main formulations, what students need to know is how complex and multi-layered and multidimensional is the world of negotiations, specifically when we're talking about the master's degree or bachelor's degree within the management, within different managerial majors. Students really saw the beauty and never-ending development opportunities in that, and at least they understand and hear several concepts, several ideas. They practiced a lot of negotiation cases. The very thing that they got curious and inspired and motivated to learn more, and they know where to do that, brought me to huge satisfaction from that course, I would say.
Oh, cool. And so if your students have projects and cases and exams about negotiation, just in brief, shortly, what is it? What is it all about?
Well, who is the definition queen?
Lazy, so to say, in the old Latin meaning of the word otio, laziness, different from the contrary to negozio, which stands for shop, business activity, what in English later we have as negotiate, negotiator, and so on. A person who is ready to enter the world of activity and not staying in that passive condition of, improving and polishing the skills, but never entering the world of activity, negotiation, work. Then, judging from etymology, negotiation would be just doing something as opposite to being lazy, staying at home, relaxing, having fun.
Oh, this is something difficult to teach because most of us would actually like to have some spare time and, doing nothing. But whenever people are curious and looking for self-improvement and looking for action for implementing the knowledge, then of course they strive to learn more and to find the beauty of negotiating. Because when we are negotiating every day for a couple of times.
But what is the most beautiful about negotiation? What do you find so beautiful about it?
The thing that preparation and knowing, this is where the competence comes with knowledge, brings better skill to negotiate than without that knowledge. And this is something that my students were actually quite specific about. They said that knowing that there are different types of the negotiation styles, different approaches to negotiation format, there are different position principle to negotiation. What is the difference? How to understand, how to read the other side, right? How to read them, how to think, how to analyze, putting everything into one paper. So we have a couple of the templates where just filling in the information brings all the context, all the ideas from your side, from the other side. And then you have assumptions which you need to test before actually diving into the negotiation. And depending which assumption was actually correct, you can make your choices that would bring you better result. That's the beauty. When we're doing this intuitively, one can bet that, okay, I can negotiate because I've been working, I don't know, for years, right? Or in the market, when you start bargaining, you can say, I'm so good at bargaining, everybody gives me a discount or something like that. Well, when we're doing that intuitively, that's one thing, right? We can see, read the situation, read the other side, maybe. But when you're working in a big company, and my students are going to be working in huge international companies, doing bargaining for huge volume, pretty important things, then being equipped with the concepts and ideas would make them feel more confident and prepared.
One case comes to my mind, and that's when I was teaching for a short period of time the basics of English to an Italian shop owner who was selling shoes. Beautiful shoes, actually. Italian leather. It's not advertisement because I honestly don't remember the name of a brand or a shop. The funny thing about that moment of bargaining and teaching two in one was that the student was struggling pronouncing 30 in the context of 30% discount. And I was trying to be funny and said, okay, well, you could try 50. It's easy to pronounce. He said, no, 20 is easy to pronounce as well. And so he wouldn't go for trying hard to practice 30, which is really hard in terms of pronunciation. But in terms of negotiation, the choice would definitely go to 20 and not 50. Yeah, just a funny case, which is a nice example of what people intuitively do as well, knowing what their price might be and never going down too much while negotiating.
Yeah, and when we're trying to use our persuasion skills, you can try to see how many tools are in your toolbox, how many skills are there in your skill set. So when you're talking about persuasion, so you can use different logical argumentation, right, to obtain the agreement. You can start convincing, requesting, arguing, flirting even, however weird it might seem in the corporate world. You can try advertising, debating, coaxing, There are so many things that you can do, and depending which one is appropriate and effective, well, that is completely different question.
I asked you about what do you find the most beautiful, but what do you find the most difficult in teaching negotiation?
The most difficult, I don't know. I had such a lovely group. Well, both of them actually. They were so hungry, so thirsty for knowledge, for getting to practice, and they were just really excited about the cases and seeing how they work one against another. I mean, like several separate teams. We were using a Jamboard to put their results. What was their discount? What was their volume? What was their specifics of the contract in each case? And I asked the question, and all 3 or 4 groups were put in their answers which they agreed upon. And they were just like, oh my gosh, how did you make it? So they were then discussing one with another what was their argument in the same case to reach a better or a lower case. And that was beautiful. What was the most difficult? I didn't know. I had such a pleasure teaching these 2 courses, these 2 groups. The most difficult was... I think, as always, during your class, when 1 or 2 students were missing the class, and then the next time they come and they look puzzled because there is something going on. They all refer to some terms, to some concept. They are already discussing. They are using those phrases. I think the most difficult was, to pick the students who missed a class or something up, and to explain what's going on, because everybody was so excited and diving into that. But I think it has very little to do with the negotiation. It has much more to do with keeping up with the class.
Yeah, true, because I wanted to comment on this as well. This is little specific to teaching negotiation. At the same time, it might be as the atmosphere is created around that fuss and fuss about negotiating as a process. And then someone comes who's new to this group, who hasn't been there for a couple of times or even once. All this process of negotiation, if we even take very simple basic examples of negotiating the price at an open market, the same things appear. Yeah, there is some process with the participants who are already there, and it always happens that someone new comes and interrupts the process, and there is some mess around it. The question would be, is there a need in the modern understanding of a negotiation process? Is there a need for more order, or is it intrinsic to the process of negotiation just to have this fuss and buzz and mess around it and now negotiate in the given conditions? What would you do? You should somehow perceive the atmosphere and get to know what kind of counterpart you have and so on.
I would answer in a very specific way. Before we start all the concepts, before we start all those different types, attitudes, styles, tactics, and so on, I give my students 6 or 7 formulations about culture-related situations. And several of them actually contain, because I have international students, they come from Korea, China, France, Germany, what was there, Slovakia, I don't know, much more. There is a question: how normal, how usual the situation may seem to you as a culture. There are several intercultural points, like people come in all the time and interrupt. Or we met 3 times before we actually dived into the negotiation itself. Or everybody was eating all the time. And because I asked this question one after another and asked everybody to comment, would it be weird for them? Would it be normal for them? Or all right, I wouldn't even mention. They all, from the very first class, saw how differently each of them perceives because of their culture, because of their own beliefs, understanding, and norms of what a negotiation is supposed to be, specifically in a business environment. Having such a start, then whenever such question arises, I can refer to and say, well, that depends what you understand as a negotiation process, what is a norm in your own head, what is the stereotype around the negotiation, a presupposition, your expectations from the negotiation, what it should be. And then when we have this structure, starting with a small talk, building trust, setting the agenda. Only when you get the agenda you can move to the details. The agenda should be as objective as possible, and so on.
And that's in which culture?
That's a normal negotiation, interculturally, neutral negotiation.
Which does not exist. Interculturally neutral.
Yeah, but at least then you know the blocks, you know what to expect, you know what to get prepared, you know where to start, what to finish, and so on. That gives you the sense of at least knowing where you are at the moment. The question about interrupting and bringing in all this fuzz and buzz and adopting the style of the negotiation, or bringing in your own expectations to the table, that's all a part of the attitude already of the competence.
I immediately imagine a situation in which all the participants, all the people who negotiate, who have been taught to negotiate correctly, internationally neutral, are outplayed by someone who has never learned anything but just belongs to a culture that is good at negotiating, at bargaining, and has always seen how things work.
I even know what you mean, and one of the ideas that intuitively you can do once or twice very good deal, right? You can make an intuitive move or find the correct way or appropriate way to do here and now. But then what's the scope of the other mistakes? What's the scope of the where you not knowing?
No, just one or two good deals and you're good.
Yeah, but that means how many of others are failed. Talking about intercultural stuff, everybody says like, oh, English is not our first language. How am I supposed to negotiate better than a native speaker? Here comes the never-ending story with native speakers and with skills. And funny enough, I have a story which actually we had with you a couple of summers ago. That story back in Italy when we lived a summer together in the south of Italy, learning Italian. And if you remember, there was this open market, the Sunday market, where everybody brought their own stuff and, selling some, how do you call this market? Flohmarkt?
Yeah, in Italian it's called Mercatino dell'Usato, which stands for second-hand stuff market. But yeah, a flea market, actually.
A flea market, yeah. So this mercatino on Sundays, which I was waiting for the whole week, because for me that was an opportunity to see what I call them a live museum under the open skies. When you go and see what people actually had in their places, what do they use, or what their parents or grandparents used to use, and so on. So for me, this is like a museum where you can touch everything, where you can talk to people who actually own this. They remembered, and I just mentioned this to my students. Imagine me being a student of A1 or A2, I don't remember what was the course, the A2 or even A1, I think.
How can you be A1 after all the Roman languages that you speak?
Okay, but knowledge is not the skill. Hello. I think that was the first or the second week in Italy after 10 classes of Italian with you and a week of Italian in the university. So that is perfectly A1 level. And I went to that Mercatino and I actually bargained in Italian with an Italian person who spends all his Sundays selling something. I found a beautiful silver bracelet, which I downpriced from 14 euros to something like 7 in Italian. And it's not even the second language, that is the fourth language, and like A1. And I actually made it to a very, very good price to me. So after that, I understood that, guys, if English is your second language or any other language is your second language, the skill here and knowledge of what to negotiate, how to read the other side, how to make sure you respect the other person and show that your interests, right, and what is their interests, might be a much more powerful tool than knowing how to pronounce correctly the word 30 or 13.
Two more things here. First, 7 is easier to pronounce than 14 in Italian, definitely. Secondly, I remember another non-native speaker in the same place in Italy, a guy from Morocco who was selling vegetables. And his Italian mostly contained infinitives and the names of vegetables. It was so fun because he was trying to persuade people who were passing by to buy his stuff. And when I said on one occasion that I wasn't going to buy again carciofi,
Artichokes.
Thank you. Because I never remember this word in other languages than Italian. And I said I wasn't going to buy them because I didn't like the taste. And he just said, using all the infinitive forms of the verbs, ma tu non sapere cucinare, you just can't cook them. And then ask your friend who will teach you how to cook. Chiedere un'amica che sapere cucinare, all with infinitives, but the meaning was absolutely clear, both the meaning of what he wanted to say and the meaning of his will to sell. And this is perfect communication. Well, I just didn't buy in the end because anyway, I'm not the person who is easy to persuade. But if it wasn't for carciofi, but for another vegetable that I was not so radical about, I most probably would have bought from him because he was really persuasive in his second language with the infinitives, no correct structures, no complete sentences, and probably no negotiation course, but very strong skills.
So those anecdotes always spice up the classes, spice up the situations, because every and each student would say, my grandmother would negotiate that easily, or okay, you should try negotiate that with my grandfather, or something like that. Let's talk first about the wisdom of people who have been negotiating all their lives and who know how to use this against you, and who are actually. There was a situation which was difficult to discuss. That's a question of manipulation and having the deception tactics during the negotiations. So that was difficult to say because then you need to have, business ethics, philosophy, the moral part of it, and trying to formulate that, guys, by the way, you can do it in all the ethical way. But be prepared that not everybody is so ethical, and be prepared to distinguish and to identify when these tactics are used against you. So I guess that was a specific moment to highlight that there is always a case to bring a negotiation that is supposed to be ethical rather than a deception-based one. However, the films and movies that the students are watching and, trying to see. So one of the tasks was to identify a negotiation in a film or a movie or something like that, and try to identify which style was there. So like among the six different parameters. And so most of them are actually using the controversial tools, the manipulation, deception, and so on, trying to bring The better tools, the more ethical tools, bringing the respect, bringing the thinking about the other party's needs and interests, that why this strategy might be winning in the long run, I think that is quite a delicate moment.
Yeah, of course, because all those manipulative tools that are traditional, but compared to more ethical, as you say, tools of negotiating could not be so winning. Hopefully, because the world is changing, will it be changing towards that direction of collaborating, and competing, not in the meaning and competence, developing your competences, not in the meaning of competing as fighting, but as we said, competing in the earlier meaning of the word, like being together.
This is specifically where you feel that the attitude pillar stands very, very strong. You can have knowledge of, styles and tactics. Okay, you can read cases. Okay, you can practice the skills. Most probably you've been doing this anyway. You can have some more. But the question of attitude becomes a cornerstone in this case. And therefore, whether or not a negotiator is competent, you can definitely see by the attitudes and this ethics that they're using. So in this case, the more skills you have is not necessarily the more competence you have. By trying to bring in the competence into your skill set, into your skills, would take the whole life. So live and learn.
Live and learn. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you share Live and Learn philosophy, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all the major social media, comment, and spread the word about this podcast so that more people could get their weekly portion of growth mindset content. Live and learn.